Hello, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Let's play chess. I won this game about 5 minutes ago. You see over here on the game review, 5 great moves out of a total of what? Probably about 20, about 30 some moves. It's not bad. It looks like about halfway through the game to about 3/4 of the way through the game. I played some very accurate moves. Uh, and you see, I gained board control around move 20, 25, something like that, and gave it away in favor of using my opponent's clock or pressuring my opponent's clock in order to secure the win for the black pieces. So let's take a look here. I want to mention also, like I said, I'm going against my opponent's clock. One mistake, two mistake, and the game's only blunder, all in the last bout, maybe 15 to 20% of the game. So I'm gonna consider this as a fairly accurate game prior to that, and then I just went for timeout. I wanted to time my opponent out, and it worked. So I normally, well, no, it was even all taken, all shots against 79% to 77% is an accurate game of chess nonetheless. So um, let's get going here. I had the black pieces, king's pawn opening, and against this move, it's part of the Vienna game. Yes, part of the Vienna game here. I probably caught that in my periphery before saying, but I do know also that this is the Vienna game. Its counterpart with d4 first and the white pawn back at e2. That's the London system, but they're different. The difference between being on the e file or the d file turns out to be a substantial difference in the type of game that is played and the types of moves that black will show as a response. Pawn to c5, bishop c4, and knight c6. A3 is a bit strange here. I think the main idea here is that my opponent does not want his bishop to be kicked back too far or too often, to open up the A2 square for white's light squared bishop. Otherwise, it's a bit slow. Knight f6, d3, bishop e7, h3. You see these moves on the flanks, moving pawns to third ranks. This usually goes against black venturing to the fourth rank with either a knight very often, or also very often a bishop to b4 or g4. These are moves that are common in the opening game, and white is playing against them prophylactically. d6. This is a strong move to support black's central pawn on e5 and make way for a bishop to go to either e6 or d7. Knight e2, bishop e6, and then knight d5. We're starting to get into the thick of things here. I chose castles to remain safe. The main idea here, with black to move in this position, how do I want to trade off a Maya piece for this d5 knight? Clearly this knight cannot just hang out there with an awesome outpost on the 5th rank and towards the center. Okay. Most likely I'll trade either my bishop on e6 or just let things go with, like, for instance, the kingside castle speaks more to knight takes e7, and after Queen takes e7. We've lost this dark squared bishop, which was a lousy bishop. He was mostly trapped in behind pawns and, in one case, a knight of his own color. That makes for a bad bishop, so-called bad bishop. Now, on the other hand, capturing bishop takes d5, it would seem that black has the initiative after e takes d5. Not quite, though, because e also targets the knight on c6, and also black and white both should calculate how about bishop takes d5. What's the lay of the land after that kind of a response? Anyway, I castled kingside here. I'm not afraid of losing this e7 bishop, who is, like I say, pretty badly excluded from otherwise being a strong piece in the game. Kingside castles. I think this is right too. My opponent leaves the knight there. He doesn't fall for it. In other words, he doesn't want this bishop. He wants this rook after rook e8 and some kind of support to help e7. This knight is a star in this game. Arguably the best piece on the board. Arguably, only because he can so easily be dispatched with. Okay, this knight is an absolute powerhouse for white. He didn't want to give that knight up for this silly bishop on e7. No offense, bishop, but right now the knight on d5 is far stronger than you. Bishop takes d5. I don't know. I guess I felt better doing this after the castling. It is a little bit strange. It's called the best move. Why? I think just because black's good bishop. I mean, how good is black's good bishop? He can cycle backwards to d7. That doesn't do that much. The f5 square is taken. We talked about the g4 square already being taken. And sacrifices on h3 only help white develop his kingside rook. And note too, though, that that knight takes d5 is not on. All right, I'll reset the colors here. Knight takes d5 leads to pawn takes d5, and we can see now that there's a fork against black's c6 knight and black's e6 bishop. If the bishop tries to capture the pawn on d5, there's enough backup, so to speak. The pawn is protected, and it's just a standard pawn fork. So knight is out. But bishop takes, or just sort of playing a natural move of centralizing a rook or something, that's a little bit better. Or a lot better, actually. So I capture with the bishop. Now you notice that one of the would-be forked pieces upon pawn takes d4 is not there. And it gives my knight enough time to escape without losing a minor piece on e6. This is exactly what occurred. The bishop back, and now we should be careful with our knight. And I thought the best way to do that was pawn to b5, and the knight can have the b7 square to escape. Short of that, something like just a good waiting move, playing h6 to create this luft and keeping pieces off of g5. I think white now has pawn to b4. Right? Because then pawn takes b4, let's say captures towards the center, and the knight has no good place to which he can move without being lost to an opponent's attack. On c6, pawn takes c6, then b takes c6, but I'm getting, as black there, I'm only getting a pawn for my knight. So we have to be a bit careful here. I have to admit, my friends, I noticed this after the fact. I played, or did I? I either noticed it after the fact or just about a moment before playing b5. I could have lost the knight on I could have lost my a5 knight here, and sometimes we find serendipity in life, and that was also the case with pawn to b5, which is a strong move to help take away some squares in the center and strengthen black's queenside pawns anyway, but it vacates the b7 square where my knight may go should he fall into some danger. Kingside castles. Pawn to c4. Captures was not the best move here for white. I think white might consider pawn to d4. If black captures, then yeah, white's either pushing more pawns towards the center of the board, or white's knight on e2 moves to d4, finding a very strong outpost. So I think the best move here for white is pawn to d4. Well, the computer likes quite a few moves before that. So let's see if I've miscalculated. Pawn to d4 is an inaccuracy. Okay. They want knight takes d4, or knight takes d5. I see. Yeah, this pawn is shielding the queen. Is preventing the queen from protecting her own pawn on d5, and this is a very important pawn. So I'll say that I am definitely on board with the computer's calculation on this matter. Okay, so anyway, in the game, we saw d takes c4, and I'm glad to get my knight on the rim. He was feeling, it was grim or something. He was on the rim and he was feeling grim. But now he's more centralized and blocks a great bit of the a2 bishop scope. And in the event that white wants to trade, I'm okay with that. I feel like this would be good to get rid of the different colored bishop, different square colored bishop, make the game more likely to decide, to end in a clear decision. That didn't happen. Pawn to f4, trying to unseat black's relative control over the center, helps white's f1 rook become a stronger part of the game. Yes, I'm not sure what it does to the bishop on c1, who's right now he's policing a lot of the would-be aggressive moves by black's c4 knight. E takes f4, so fine, but we're going to clarify some of the tension in the middle. And now I played knight e4. This is flagged as a bit of an inaccuracy, or as an inaccuracy of both. This is flagged as an inaccuracy. The point, though, is practically speaking, there are a lot of ways that having two knights glaring down on d2 right in the middle of white's, home pieces. These knights in a lot of positions can support each other from e4 to d2 and d2 back to e4, or from c4 to d2 and d2 back to c4, back to c4. So these guys, there's tons of threats, and right now neither of them is completely lost due to tactics. Now, in this position, why would then this be an inaccuracy? And I think that's because bishop takes c4, b takes c4, and there's only one knight there, right? But why is this then still the move I chose? Because it takes, my opponent has to defeat the idea, right? My opponent in this position must defeat the idea of having knights backing each other up as far as d2 and the fourth rank. So, I mean, maybe it says I don't want to lose my pawn on b2. All right, let's get rid of the knight attacking b2. I can see that too. Also, I can see that as being a strong reason why the computer would rather black to play knight takes b2. And we see here that is in fact the move for black. And I'm gonna have to eat my hat here. I'm gonna say I didn't look at that. I did not examine knight takes b2. That's definitely a better move. Picking up the pawn, a tempo against the queen. Wherever she moves, she's only improving a bit. Probably to the c file, and then the knight goes right back to c4, and he's totally embittered, or he's totally better as a result. There's no pawn to kick him from this really awesome outpost. Yeah, no, the computer's right here. I think, and knight takes b2 is better for black to the tune of 3/10 of a pawn. And the best alternative that I played was, I did all that on white's move, didn't I? No, I didn't on black's move. Knight to e4 is like a pawn, or 0.8, 0.9, about a pawn and a third. Yeah, okay. I dig. I was ready to say that this was even more important than that. But 1.3 pawns is legit. This is 1.3 pawns worse than not this. 1.3 pawns worse. Well, anyway, I should have captured on b2, and now e4 has its own ideas, so it's not the end of the world, and I'm gonna protect that knight on e4 with the pawn that's now on f5. And part of my plan was to consider white's pawn on d5. It's kind of stuck. Black has so many ways to recapture on d6 that the pawn on d5 is kind of on his own there. And this will block white's light squared bishop for a while. The king doesn't even have to take time to go to h8 because it's a waste of time. This pawn is very strong in protecting white's own attack. Just how things worked out that way. Like I've been saying, I've been thinking that bishop takes c4 is a strong move for white. It's been lingering now for a few moves even. Been lingering there for a few moves, and I don't recall if we actually got to that. But knight to d4, bishop g5, knight to e6. Almost winning the exchange. The queen has this bailout move. Queen to b6 check. It's the only good move. And after more natural here is king to h1. But my opponent wanted this strong outpost on d4, so I'm not. It's a little critical of that move based on seeing that it was a blunder, but aside from that, I'm not sure what I would have said. And knight to e3. Sometimes we use almost tactics to gain Sometimes we use almost tactics to gain strategic aims. The knight is attacking c2 and f1. So white says, okay, I'll capture that knight with an equal value piece on e3, and white, and then black captures on e3 again with check and da da da. It doesn't do all that much in terms of winning the exchange, but I think black's going to end up winning a pawn on d4 and have a really powerful central queen. She'll be very strong, a full queen, assisted also by a knight on e4. So black will be doing well in that case. I think this is how the game proceeded. I'm going to backtrack. Yes, that is the right move. Picking up this pawn is strong, and now we just sort of react in a way that that makes sense for black. Black has an extra pawn in an endgame, so we pick up another pawn here and let's try to be setting up some strong moves. Right. So here we get to the point. Rook f2. Both sides are in desperate time control. Both sides are in desperate time pressure. I'm going to start making some very serious, but I made that one very serious blunder, and putting checks to my opponent's king as a way of, there you have it, timing him out on a board that's pretty much even otherwise. One of the things about the 6 fundamental forces of chess, sometimes we can trade one off and convert it to another type. If we have an advantage in space, we might be interested in converting that advantage in space into an advantage in material, or what have you. The fundamental forces of chess: space, king safety, material, mobility, initiative, and clock. Alright, you can sometimes trade one of these for the other. That, for instance, that's part of the reason why the pre-move is so good. It allows you to really trade clock for something else, like probably the other way around actually. It allows you to trade material for clock. I mean, you don't have to go so far as dumping a whole rook on c3, but it's not a move he's going to anticipate. All right, and you wouldn't play this move when it's 25-19, but you might play this move when you have 5 and he has 2, right? That's a whole different type of ball game. I'm just giving checks and we win via timeout. Alright, so that's it for this review. I'm going to play some chess now. Take a short break, quick break, whatever it is, probably quick, and be back very soon. Okay, 5-minute blitz, Jordan. Yeah. Alright, we're going to start with the king's pawn opening and try the king's gambit. We're in the king's gambit. 3f3 in the king's gambit for white. And then we expand in the center a bit. The pawn's up for the taking, If he captures on e4, he didn't. I'm gonna actually boot this bishop, and there might be some opportunity to fork pieces. Let me take a look here. Expand my pawn chain. One off shot against the queen, and pretty soon we're destroying black's kingside pawn shield. Let's go for it here. There's a, I think I might see knight takes e5, and then he could plug the hole from a check by knight to g6. Didn't happen, so here we are with the check. I believe white is doing very well right now. Okay, to be honest, my friends, I'm a bit worked up, so let's go over this game, and then I'm going to sign off for this session. By go over, just review. It's a different way to say review. Alright, this short game had a lot of blunders, and I consider blunders and misses to be about as bad as one to the other and the other to the one. So each had two of those when you add them up. and then an additional 2 mistakes per side. So this was not the most accurate game. Let's take a look at it anyway. So far, King's Gambit accepted. White expands with the idea of reclaiming that pawn on f4. Apparently this is not as good as I thought it was. And with a few moves we find this position. Common here would be, I think we might see knight at d to e7, blocking the attack against the queen. The knight's protected by his own piece type and the queen, and for a moment the king, who we think is probably gonna castle kingside pretty darn soon. f6 blocks the attack, but like we saw in the game, introduces quite a few structural weaknesses into black's kingside pawn shield prior to kingside castle. So this could be very dangerous for black, and this is what turned out to be the case in the game, as white showed he's willing to part with one piece or the other, not both, and still play queen h5 check for a really dynamic attack. And black will probably be better or about better on the evaluation bar, but all the mistakes to be made will be on black side of things, right? F takes g6 is just downright a blunder. The queen comes to h5, and her attacks are too strong. Let's see. I was trying to play queen to f7 check and only move king to d6. And now, of course, we're getting really hungry. But what does white do? I'm aware of the move knight f7 check, which would win black's queen. Right now, that's not there because white's queen is occupying the f7 square. So I'm not sure. Let's solve this mate in 2, okay? I think the mate in 2 would be queen. Oh no. Oh no, yeah, we did solve the mate. Well, we kind of took an extra move. Let's try this, George. This is the type of thing that should be doable. We're gonna play queen f7 check and then knight c4. We played this in a type of manner of speaking, and I want to protect my honor here. I did kind of see this. I mean, did kind of see this. This is weasel words from the start to the finish, but no, I did kind of see this. Queen takes g5 will either transpose to, like in the game, knight c4 type of checkmates, or in other versions, make black lose his queen. Queen or a king to d6 here. Knight f7 check, and the queen's gone. So yeah, I missed the mate in 2. However, I did play a fine move. This is the second best move, and white is winning, maintains the lead, and all those great things. Then we sort of demonstrate that knight to c4 is available for making a checkmate anyway. Interesting. My point, the point about capturing on g5 is mostly that this move doesn't lose, it maintains the win, and it clarifies the board a bit for white mostly. So white's doing fine here. Quite. Alright, well, should I play one more game? I'll take that as a yes. declining us. It's a great game. I feel like declining. Sorry about that. I try not to polish. Alright. Just awesome chess. 83 and 91. Wow, okay, let's review. Actually, my friends, I'm gonna do a really light review. I'm only gonna go over main points here. Controlling the center by occupying pawns and the range of pieces and against from the sides. It's a classic meeting between hypermodern and classical ideas of controlling the center. The tactics work out in White's favor here, and then soon enough, bad move. White's in Black's favor. Sorry. The tactics work out in Black's favor here. And soon enough, White sort of buckles under the pressure, and there's White Queen is lost on the board. Actually took me a while to dust things up from there. There's a number of white pieces left on the board here and there. I don't consider the way I handled this overly goofed up. This is not an overly goofed up ending. In fact, Queen takes d1 to sacrifice the queen, but get 2 rooks in exchange. I have to say that looking for and finding that type of move is heads up. So it's a good way. Now it's very clear that Black has the material lead and makes finishing things a little bit easier for Black and Black's clock. And then just a simplifying move. I'll pin the bishop with the idea of sacrificing on c5. So when my opponent moves out of the bishop pin, do it anyway. That's a good move already. There's a mate in 6. I'm more concerned with avoiding stalemating my opponent. So every move is a check kind of thing. There we go. Wow. Really glad to have played a really awesome game against Kral Khan. We both played accurate chess through to the 48th, all the way through to the 48th move, and I felt like we really had a nifty and awesome game as a result. So my thank you to my opponent, Kralkan. And that's it. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Gravitrons. I'm more gravity. Have a great night.